Welcome to CineMyles, the show for cinephiles. I'm your host, Miles Hughes. I'm joined once again by Mr. Matt Tompkins. And you may remember last year we did a fun little retrospective video on the films of Guillermo del Toro. It's playing right here, and this would be a perfect time for you to watch it and check it out if you haven't. It's really good, seriously. But there was one thing missing from that video, and that was the fact that somehow we managed to start filming it without realizing that neither of us had seen The Devil's Backbone. This is Guillermo's third, right after Mimic, but before Blade 2, and it's one of those ones that I'd always heard great things about, but just never quite got around to.
All I really know is just the kid with the weird red gas coming out of his broken pottery head, and that's all I really knew of the movie. I knew nothing else.
Well, and I think part of the reason for that is that actually watching the movie, that's the most Del Toro-esque visual. It's actually a pretty grounded sort of character piece. Almost in the vein of Crimson Peak, in the sense that it's a ghost story that doesn't really have much to do with the ghosts. But also, as in Crimson Peak, the ghosts don't really play that much significance in the outcome of the plot.
No, I mean, they're pretty to look at, but overall, this movie would be, I think, just as solid without a ghost.
Yeah, like you could literally cut the ghost out of the movie and it wouldn't really change that much. A lot of you may not have heard of this film or be familiar with it. It's a Spanish language film from 2001.
This movie also takes place during the Spanish Civil War.
But it's happening sort of off in the distance.
So it has really nothing to do with the story, it's just the backdrop.
It's the backdrop, it sort of sets up, because it's all these kids who are sort of orphaned by the war. Either their parents are fighting or dead or some combination of the two.
They get letters.
They get letters from their mums who are feeling a little better. And it's run by this awesome lady who is missing a leg. That's the only other Del Toro thing, is that she's got this great like wooden and metal leg. And it's so cool to see her sort of hobbling around on it.
There's a little compartment.
Oh my god, it's really good.
Everything in the movie, like, it's so solid.
Yes.
Like, I think every part of it has a reason, because at first you think, oh, okay, it's a prosthetic leg just for the look of it, because that's how Del Toro do. But as it gets further and further in the story, you're like, oh, that's because of this.
Exactly. Well, it has a very specific function in the plot, but it's also really important from a character building standpoint. All the characters are incredibly well developed. You'd mentioned similarities to Pan's Labyrinth. A lot of this film feels like it has the raw DNA of Pan's Labyrinth. Like, if he'd had a bit more money, he might have just gone and made Pan's Labyrinth. And it's different in its specifics, and it's nowhere near as fantasy-oriented. But it does have a lot of the same character dynamics. You've got the kindly sort of woman who works there and likes the kids. You've got this really friggin' nasty villain.
That's another thing. Like, when Del Toro isn't using monsters as the bad guy, he really knows how to make a bad guy. Like, a really, like, you hate this person, human bad guy.
Jacinto is his name, and yeah, like, you detest him every second that he's on screen. And they do give you just enough shading that, like, he's not just, like, evil McBad guy. Like, he is an actual, like, character, and he's got these insecurities. Like, he's very compelling, in the same way that Captain Vidal was in Pan's Labyrinth.
Well, even at the beginning of this movie, we both thought that he was gonna, like, be the nice sort of older orphan that was gonna help out, like, the new guy out, and then as it gets further and further, you really start hating him.
And it's nicely contrasted by how much you really like all the other characters.
Oh yeah, well, because the Doctor alone is such a cool, nice guy. Like,
he's great.
The main character, Carlos, he's dropped off by the person who's supposed to look after him while his father's fighting or whatever. And
no, I think the father's dead, but, like, nobody's told him.
Nobody's told him. And so, like...
And nobody ever does tell him. That just sort of gets forgotten about.
The kid's running after his caretaker, and, like, he's outside, his suitcase breaks, and he's just sort of gone. He's so sad about this. The Doctor just walks up, and he sees this book, like, oh, you've been reading The Count of Monte Cristo. Tell me about it. Like, he's really trying to connect with him to make him feel less like crap. Del Toro, wonderful relationship writing things.
Like, honestly, this might have one of the better scripts of a Del Toro film.
Oh, well, I think it's because Del Toro had more of an idea of what he wanted with these.
Yeah.
With Pan's Labyrinth, with this, with Kronos. And then further on, he had these little ideas, but then let other people try to expand more on it.
Yeah.
Probably.
Don't really know why it's called the Devil's Backbone, I'll be honest. Like, there is what they call a Devil's Backbone, which is like a weird fetus baby that has like a creepy backbone.
In the beginning, you see these, like, shadings and silhouettes of these babies, but, like, the backbones in that are way cooler than the backbone you see in the jars.
The opening credits kind of set up that there's going to be a crazy, like, monster person with a crazy backbone, but that's not in the movie. Nope. No, there's surprisingly little of what you think of when you think of Del Toro's stuff. Like, the ghost kid looks pretty creepy. He's very matter-of-factly presented, too. There's no, like, building up to the ghost moments. It's just like, oh, there he is. We haven't even talked about the crazy missile in the middle of the square.
Oh, my... No.
Man, that is like one of the coolest set design things I've ever seen in a movie. So there's this bomb that dropped in the middle of this square that's like central to the movie, and it never blew up, so it's just sort of stuck there. And it's kind of like, it doesn't really play that heavily into the plot, but it's just really cool that it's there.
It plays into the lore of everything else.
Yeah.
It's just...
world building.
Yeah.
It's beautifully shot.
Each shot is like a painting. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Every shot is very intentional and very purposeful and very composed. Like, even when clearly working on a limited budget, the color and, you know, the costuming, production design, like, it's all so well defined. I really enjoy this movie because it doesn't waste your time.
It just keeps going. It keeps building. There's no, like, dead space of, this is what life is like in the orphanage.
No, like, there are constantly new developments, new character revelations, and even if some of the scene-to-scene stuff is a little predictable, there's still a lot that happens that you're like, you wouldn't expect it to get to that point.
I don't care if it's predictable as long as it keeps the story going.
Yeah. And it's really engaging throughout. You really care about everyone involved. The acting is really good. It's really well written. I'd say this is one of his better films.
I completely agree with that. I actually feel bad that we weren't able to discuss this in the
retrospective. I agree, but I also am glad that we get the chance to single it out. This might be his best film that nobody talks about. I think it's clear that we both highly recommend this film.
Oh, yes.
You know, it is in Spanish, and you may have to do subtitles and whatever, but deal, man. It's worth it. So that's going to do it for us from CineMyles. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those fun things. Thank you for joining me, Matthew.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we will catch you all on the flip side. Have a good night.